October 31st, 1964. Aqueduct Racetrack, New York. Kelso walked onto the track as an 8-year-old champion who should have already been finished. Most racehorses never make it this far. Most champions rise, dominate for a short time, and disappear before the sport has a chance to watch them grow old. But Kelso was different. He did not win one great race and vanish. He stayed. Year after year, season after season, weight after weight, challenge after challenge, Kelso kept coming back. He was not the biggest horse in racing. He was not the prettiest. He was not a Triple Crown winner. He was not even a stallion who could one day pass his greatness on through foals. Kelso was a gelding, which meant he had been castrated young and would never become a breeding stallion. In the eyes of many people, that should have made his future smaller. Instead, it helped make him unforgettable. Because Kelso could not be retired to stud after one brilliant season. There was no fortune waiting for him in the breeding shed. His legacy had to be built the hard way, on the racetrack. By 1964, he had already been named Horse of the Year 4 times in a row. No other horse had done anything like that. He had carried huge weights. He had beaten champions. He had won the Jockey Club Gold Cup again and again. He had already ruled American racing longer than almost any horse before him. But now, on this day at Aqueduct, he was being asked to prove himself one more time. The race was the Jockey Club Gold Cup, one of the most prestigious races in America. It was run at 2 miles, a distance that demanded stamina, class, and courage. Kelso had won it in 1960, then 1961, then 1962, then 1963. Now he was trying to win it for the 5th straight time. 5 years, 5 Gold Cups. 5 chances to prove that age, weight, and time still had not caught him. As the field moved through the long race, Kelso did what he had done for years. He stayed in the fight. He did not need to be flashy. He did not need to look like a young superstar. He simply kept running. Around him were younger horses, fresher horses, horses trying to be the one that finally ended his reign. But Kelso refused to fade. Down the stretch, the old champion kept going. The crowd knew what they were watching. This was not just another victory. This was history from a horse who had turned durability into greatness. Kelso crossed the finish line first. He had won the Jockey Club Gold Cup for the 5th consecutive year. His time of 3:19.1 for 2 miles on dirt set a world record. And when the season ended, Kelso was named Horse of the Year for the 5th straight time. From 1960 through 1964, a record no horse has ever matched. This is the story of Kelso, the horse who refused to fade, how a small and overlooked gelding became racing's 5-time king, how he won without the glamour of the Triple Crown, how he carried weights that would break ordinary horses, and why one of the greatest champions in racing history built his legend not through one perfect season, but through years of refusing to go away. Kelso was born on April 4th, 1957 at Claiborne Farm in Kentucky. He was bred by Bohemia Stable, owned by Allaire Dupont, a woman from one of America's wealthiest families who became deeply connected to one of racing's most unusual champions. Kelso was a dark bay colt, but he was not the kind of yearling that made everyone stop and stare. He was not described as a perfect-looking future champion. He was small, awkward, and difficult. Some great horses look like greatness before they ever race. Kelso did not. His sire was your host, a talented racehorse who had shown ability, but was not yet proven as a stallion. His dam was maid of flight, and through her Kelso carried important blood, including a connection to Triple Crown winner Count Fleet. But even with that pedigree, Kelso was not treated like the obvious next superstar. He was rough around the edges. He was hard to handle. He had attitude. Before he ever became famous, Kelso was gelded, partly in hopes of calming him down. It did not magically turn him into an easy horse. Kelso could still be stubborn, difficult, and full of personality. But being gelded changed the entire shape of his life. He would never have a stallion career waiting for him. He would never retire early because breeders wanted his bloodline. If Kelso was going to become immortal, he had to do it by racing, again and again. And that is exactly what he did. Kelso began his racing career as a 2-year-old in 1959. He was trained first by Dr. John Lee and made his debut at Atlantic City Racecourse. He won his first race, but he did not instantly become a national sensation. He ran only 3 times as a 2-year-old, winning once and finishing second twice. There were signs of talent, but nothing yet that screamed 5-time Horse of the Year. At that point, nobody could have known what was coming. Nobody could have known that this awkward gelding would one day be ranked among the greatest horses of the 20th century. Nobody could have known that he would become the kind of horse children sent fan letters to. Nobody could have known that he would keep winning so long that his career would feel less like a sports story and more like a reign. In 1960, Kelso's career began to change. He was now 3 years old, the age when most great American racehorses are judged by the Triple Crown, the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness Stakes, the Belmont Stakes. Those are the races that make names famous. Secretariat had the Belmont. Seattle Slew had the undefeated Triple Crown. Citation had his 1948 sweep. American Pharoah ended a 37-year drought. But Kelso did not run in the Triple Crown. That is part of what makes his story different. Many horses become legends because of what they do in the spring of their 3-year-old season. Kelso's greatness came later, slower, longer. He was not a horse whose story exploded in 3 races. He was a horse who built his name over years until the sport had no choice but to recognize him. In 1960, Kelso came under the care of trainer Carl Hanford, and that partnership became one of the most important parts of his story. Hanford understood the horse. He understood that Kelso was not just another runner to be used up quickly. He had ability, yes, but he also had toughness. And with Kelso, toughness would become just as important as speed. Kelso started winning. Then he kept winning. He won the Choice Stakes. He won the Jerome Handicap. He won the Discovery Handicap. He won the Lawrence Realization. Then he took on one of the biggest races of the year, the Jockey Club Gold Cup. The Jockey Club Gold Cup was not a short, easy race. At that time, it was run at 2 miles, a distance far longer than the average major American race today. 2 miles asks a horse to do something different. It is not enough to be quick. A horse must stay. He must keep going after others have used up their strength. He must have lungs, heart, patience, and courage. Kelso had all of it. He won the 1960 Jockey Club Gold Cup and began a streak that would become one of the most famous in racing history. By the end of 1960, Kelso had won 8 of 9 races that year. He was named Horse of the Year. It was a remarkable achievement, especially for a horse who had not won the Triple Crown and had not been the early season superstar. But by the end of the year, there was no doubt, Kelso was the best horse in America. Still, one Horse of the Year title does not make a 5-time king. The real test was whether he could do it again. In 1961, Kelso returned as a 4-year-old. This mattered because in racing, many champions disappear after their 3-year-old season. They win big races, get injured, retire, or move to breeding. Fans see them for a short time, then spend the rest of their lives wondering what might have been. Kelso was not leaving. As a gelding, he had no breeding career waiting. He was here to race. And in 1961, he began proving that his 1960 season had not been a lucky peak. He won the Metropolitan Handicap, he won the Suburban Handicap, he won the Brooklyn Handicap. Together, those races were known as the New York Handicap Triple. Winning all three was extremely difficult, partly because they required a horse to carry serious weight and perform across major handicap races against strong, older competition. Kelso became only the 3rd horse in history at that time to sweep the series. That season showed one of the defining parts of Kelso's greatness: weight. In handicap racing, the best horses are assigned more weight to make races more equal. The idea is simple. If a horse is better than everyone else, make him carry more weight and give the others a chance. For ordinary horses, a few extra pounds can matter. For great horses, weight becomes part of their legend. Kelso carried weight like a champion, carried 130 pounds or more many times in his career. He did not always have easy conditions. He was not always meeting rivals on equal terms. Often, the racing secretary was trying to slow him down by putting more weight on his back. But Kelso kept winning anyway. In 1961, he won 7 of 9 starts and captured his 2nd straight Horse of the Year title. The horse, who had been overlooked because he was a gelding and did not fit the normal superstar path, was now the ruler of American racing, but the reign was still just beginning. In 1962, Kelso returned again. Now he was 5 years old, not ancient, but already older than many champions who had come and gone. The racing world knew him now. They knew his style, they knew his toughness, they knew he was dangerous at long distances, strong under weight, and hard to discourage. That did not make him easier to beat. He won the Woodward Stakes. He won the Jockey Club Gold Cup again. He continued facing strong horses and carrying major expectations. Every season made the same question louder. How long could he keep doing this? In sports, staying great is often harder than becoming great. One huge season can happen when everything lines up. But to stay at the top, a champion has to survive injuries, age, rivals, changing conditions, and the pressure of being expected to win every time. Kelso did not win every single race. That was never his story. His story was that no matter how many times racing tried to move on, he kept dragging it back to him. By the end of 1962, Kelso was named Horse of the Year for the 3rd straight time, 3 years in a row. At this point, his greatness was no longer a surprise. It was becoming something heavier, something historic. Something that made people realize they were watching a horse who could not be explained by one campaign. Then came 1963. Kelso was now 6 years old. Most racehorses at 6 are already gone from top-level competition. If they are still racing, many have slowed down, many have lost their sharpness, many are remembered more for what they used to be than what they still are. Kelso was still very much alive. In 1963, he had one of his greatest seasons. He won major races again and again, including the Whitney Stakes, the Suburban Handicap, the Woodward Stakes, and the Jockey Club Gold Cup. He also won races like the Gulfstream Park Handicap and the Aqueduct Handicap. He was not just showing up for 1 or 2 carefully chosen starts. He was campaigning like an old-school warrior. By the end of 1963, Kelso had won 9 of 12 starts, and once again he was named Horse of the Year, 4 straight years. At this point, the achievement had become almost ridiculous. Racing had seen great horses before. Man o' War had dominated his era. Citation had won the Triple Crown and became the first millionaire. Native Dancer had captured the public imagination, but Kelso was doing something different. He was not burning bright for one season. He was refusing to stop. His fans loved that about him. Kelso became more than a champion. He became familiar. People had time to grow attached to him because he kept coming back. They watched him as a young champion, then an older champion, then an aging champion, who still would not surrender his crown. That is a different kind of connection. A horse like Secretariat gives the world one unbelievable season and becomes immortal. A horse like Kelso gives the world years. He becomes part of people's lives. Fans follow him from race to race, season to season, hoping the old warrior can do it one more time. And in 1964, Kelso did it again. By now, he was 7 years old. The sport should have belonged to younger horses. New challengers should have taken over. Every year, a new crop of 3-year-olds arrives full of promise. Every year, new names appear. Racing does not wait for old champions. It constantly searches for the next one. But Kelso was still there. In 1964, he won the Jockey Club Gold Cup for the 5th straight time. That alone would have been enough to make the season historic. But he did more than win it. He set a world record for 2 miles on dirt, running the distance in 3 minutes, 19.1 seconds. Then, only 11 days later, he won the Washington, D.C. International on turf and set an American record for 1.5 miles on grass. That race mattered because it showed Kelso was not only a dirt champion, he could handle turf too. He could win long. He could win underweight. He could win on different surfaces. He could still surprise people even after years of greatness. By the end of 1964, the voters had no real choice. Kelso was named Horse of the Year again, for the 5th straight time. 5 consecutive years at the top of American racing. No horse has ever matched that record. Some horses have 1 perfect season, some have 2 brilliant seasons. Kelso had a reign. That is why calling him racing's 5-time king fits so well, because he did not just win a crown, he kept it. But Kelso's story did not end there. In 1965, he returned again. Now, he was 8 years old. The fact that he was still competing at a high level was already incredible. The fact that he could still win major races was almost unbelievable. He won the Whitney Stakes again in 1965, giving him a major victory at an age when most champions are long retired. He continued to carry weight, face strong opponents, and give fans a reason to believe that maybe Kelso would never truly fade. But every career has an ending. In 1966, Kelso's racing career came to a close after an injury. He retired with a career record of 63 starts, 39 wins, 12 seconds, and 2/3. His earnings were $1,977,896, making him the richest racehorse in history at the time. Those numbers tell part of the story, but numbers alone cannot fully explain Kelso. To understand him, you have to understand what it meant to race 63 times. Modern champions often race fewer than 15 times in their entire careers. Some race fewer than 10. Kelso raced season after season. He travelled. He carried weight. He faced champions. He ran on dirt and turf. He ran short enough to show speed and long enough to prove stamina. He was tested in a way many modern horses never are. And he kept answering. Kelso was inducted into the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame in 1967, only a year after his retirement. Decades later, the Blood Horse ranked him fourth on its list of the top 100 American racehorses of the 20th century. That means he was placed behind only Man o' War, Secretariat, and Citation, ahead of legends like Seattle Slew, Affirmed, and Seabiscuit. That ranking shows how seriously racing historians take him. But casual fans do not always talk about Kelso the way they talk about Secretariat or Seabiscuit. Why? Because Kelso's greatness does not fit the easiest story. He did not win the Triple Crown. He did not have one single race as famous as Secretariat's Belmont. He did not have a Hollywood underdog moment like Seabiscuit beating War Admiral. He did not have a perfect unbeaten record like Frankel. He did not have a tragic final race like Ruffian. Kelso's greatness was built differently. It was built through time. That may be why he is one of the most impressive horses to make a video about. His story is not about one day when everything changed. It is about a horse who made every year feel like it still belonged to him. In 1960, he became champion. In 1961, he proved it was not luck. In 1962, he defended the throne. In 1963, he refused to let go. In 1964, he made history no horse has matched. By then, Kelso had become something more than a racehorse. He was a symbol of staying power. He was proof that greatness does not always have to be young, flashy, or perfect. Sometimes greatness is stubborn. Sometimes greatness is tough. Sometimes greatness keeps showing up long after everyone expects it to disappear. That was Kelso. He was called a gelding, as if that made him less valuable. But being a gelding meant racing got to keep him. Fans did not lose him to breeding after one or two great seasons. They got to watch him grow older, stronger, and more beloved. They got to see him build a career that felt almost impossible by modern standards. And because he was not a stallion, his legacy could not be carried by sons or daughters. It had to be carried by memory. That makes his story even more powerful. Kelso had no famous foals to remind the world of him. He had no bloodline dynasty to keep his name in pedigrees. What he had was his record, his races, his weights, his titles, his 5 Horse of the Year crowns. He had himself. That was enough. Kelso's personality also helped make him memorable. He was not a polished, perfect animal with a calm and regal image. He was known for being difficult, opinionated, and full of character. That made fans love him more. He felt like a fighter, not a statue. A horse with moods, a horse with pride, a horse who seemed to know he was special and did not feel the need to make life easy for anyone. There is something fitting about that. Kelso's career was not easy either. He earned his place the hard way. He carried 130 pounds or more on 24 occasions. He won 13 of those races, finished second in 5, and third once. That kind of record under heavy weight is almost impossible to imagine now. It shows how often racing tried to make things harder for him, and how often he still found a way. He won the Jockey Club Gold Cup 5 times. He won the Woodward Stakes 3 times. He won the Whitney Stakes 3 times. He won the Suburban Handicap twice. He won on dirt. He won on turf. He set or matched records across different distances and conditions. He was not a one-dimensional horse. He was a complete warrior. The 1964 season may be the best example. First, he wins the Jockey Club Gold Cup at 2 miles on dirt in world record time. Then, just 11 days later, he wins the Washington, D.C. International on turf at 1.5 miles in American record time. That is the kind of achievement that shows range most horses never come close to. 2 miles on dirt, 1.5 miles on turf, 11 days apart. At 7 years old, that is not just talent, that is greatness with durability. After retirement, Kelso lived out the rest of his life at Woodstock Farm in Maryland. He remained loved by fans and connected to the people who had followed his career. He died on October 16th, 1983, at the age of 26. But his name never fully left racing. Every time people discuss the greatest horses who never won the Triple Crown, Kelso belongs near the top. Every time people talk about durability, he belongs in the conversation. Every time people ask which horse ruled racing the longest, Kelso's 5 Horse of the Year titles answer for him. No other horse has done it. That is the key. 5 times. Not once, not twice, not even 3. 5. In a sport where champions can rise and fall in a single season, Kelso stayed king for half a decade. That is why his story needs to be told, because the sport often celebrates the quick legend, the one huge win, the perfect Triple Crown run, the dramatic upset, the undefeated record. Those stories are great, but Kelso represents something else. He represents the champion who keeps going, the horse who wakes up next season and still has more. The horse who carries the weight because everyone knows he is better. The horse who grows older, faces younger rivals, and still makes them chase him. The horse who refuses to fade. Kelso's career asks a different question than most racing stories. Not how great can a horse be for one race, not how perfect can a horse be for one season, but how long can greatness last? For Kelso, the answer was 5 years at the very top. From 1960 through 1964, racing belonged to him. Other horses came and went, other names appeared, other challengers tried. But at the end of each year, when the votes were counted, the answer was the same. Kelso, Horse of the Year, again, 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 again. That repetition is what made him legendary. It is easy to imagine a flashy young horse stealing the spotlight for a moment. It is much harder to imagine one horse holding that spotlight for years while carrying heavier weights and facing constant pressure. Kelso did not need to be unbeaten. He did not need to be perfect. His greatness came from the fact that even when he lost, he came back. Even when he aged, he came back. Even when the sport searched for someone new, he came back. The horse who refused to fade. That is the story. And maybe that is why Kelso feels different from other legends. Secretariat was the miracle. Man o' War was the myth. Seabiscuit was the underdog. Citation was the forgotten Triple Crown king. Seattle Slew was the undefeated Triple Crown winner. Frankel was perfection. Ruffian was brilliance cut short. Kelso was endurance. He was the long reign. The old king who kept fighting. The gelding who could not pass on his greatness through blood, so he carved it into racing history with every start. When people watched Kelso in 1964, they were not just watching a horse win another race. They were watching time fail to catch him. They were watching a champion who should have already been replaced, but somehow still stood in front of the next generation. That is rare in any sport. Most champions are eventually pushed aside. A younger athlete arrives, a faster opponent appears, the body slows. The magic fades. The crowd moves on. But for 5 years, Kelso did not let that happen. He kept the crown. And when he finally retired, he left behind a record that still feels almost untouchable. 63 starts, 39 wins, nearly $2 million in earnings, 5 Jockey Club Gold Cups, 5 Horse of the Year titles, a world record at 2 miles, an American record on turf, a Hall of Fame career, and a place among the greatest racehorses of the 20th century. Kelso may not have the most famous single race in history, but he has something just as powerful, a career that would be almost impossible to repeat. That is why his legend deserves to stand beside the biggest names in racing, not because he won the Triple Crown, not because he was undefeated, not because his story ended in one dramatic moment, but because he kept proving himself long after most champions would have been gone. On October 31st, 1964, when Kelso won his 5th straight Jockey Club Gold Cup, he was not just winning another trophy. He was completing one of the greatest reigns racing had ever seen. He was showing the world that a horse could be older, burdened with weight, chased by younger rivals, and still be the one they all had to catch. They tried for years. Most of the time, they failed. Because Kelso was not the horse who burned bright and disappeared. He was the horse who stayed, the horse who carried the weight, the horse who won again and again, the horse who made 5 straight years belong to him, the horse who refused to fade. And in the history of American racing, that made him a king.